What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Nemo Propaganda here, and welcome to 2025. We wrapped up 2024. We had a lot of winners. I wanted to start this year off strong. Now, I don't usually review budget gear. I don't usually like budget gear, but every now and then I find a gem. I always have my eyes open for a nice hidden gem, a good high quality product that comes in at a rock bottom basement price. And I found one. This is the Micca MB42X G2 or Generation 2. Some of you guys that have been with me for a really long time might remember when I reviewed the original Micca MB42X many years ago. Please don't go and dig up that video. Nemo Propaganda was a very amateur reviewer back then, but I digress. This is the new G2. And it is an absolute winner. The crazy part, the price is still just $99. Okay, look, let's just get those main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'll tell you about some standout features, what I think make the speaker unique, what it sounds like going through the treble, mid-range, and bass. We'll compare it to some other speakers in and around this price category. I'll tell you if there's any caveats or cons, and then we'll wrap up the video. So, standout feature, first and foremost, is going to be the price point. $99 is a very affordable category. Anyone can afford the speaker. Second standout feature is going to be the size. These are absolutely tiny. Special shout out to my Bucard S400 Mark II down here that I had to use as a stand because these guys are so small. I needed something extra to prop them up. I know, guys, Nemo Propaganda is still an amateur in some ways. Otherwise, I would have some kind of nice stand to prop up smaller speakers, but I very rarely review such tiny speakers like this, so I had to get unique. It is what it is. I'm sorry, Bucard. I apologize, okay? So, the size, we got the price. Sound quality is a standout feature. We're going to get to that in just a second. These are sold through Amazon, so I guess another standout feature might be these are widely available. It's fairly common that I'll review something that I think is absolutely amazing, and then I get my guys in other countries that are like, I can't get that here. It's not available, or it is, but it's just tremendously more expensive. A lot of companies don't like to ship outside of the United States or to some remote regions. If your country's got Amazon, you can get the Micca MB42X G2. So let's jump into the treble, the mid-range, and the bass. And first, let me just start this off right and tell you one thing I really liked about this speaker and why I consider this such a hidden gem. The sound tuning is a lot like the KEF R3 Meta that's $2,200 for the pair. Now, I'm not saying this $99 speaker competes with the KEF R3 Meta, but its voicing, its tuning is very similar. Essentially, I mean, if someone was like, this is like an ultra budget version of that R3 Meta type of sound, I'd be like, yeah, there's definitely some truth to that. So let me take you through it. The treble, mostly neutral. Mostly neutral, guys. It's not tilted up like the old MB42X was. This is smooth, if ever, perhaps slightly relaxed even, but it is still articulate. It is still going to give you pretty decent detail if you can believe that, even at $99 for the pair, yes. Let's go down to the mid-range. Little bit of warmth here, a little bit of warmth. And that's not something you usually see in this ultra budget category. Usually ultra budget speakers are all about clarity. They're all about playing clean and clear and loud. Not this speaker. This gives you some warmth in the mid-range, some tonal richness, some body to male vocals, and even the breathy female vocalists, some weight to that. Again, that's a lot like the R3 Meta, right? Moving down to the bass, you might expect me to say there's hardly any at all. That's how the old MB42X was. That's how most tiny speakers are. Not this one. This one actually has quite a bit of bass. It has a very full sound. And if you look back to my KEF R3 Meta video, that's kind of how I described the KEF R3 Meta. A little, relaxed up top, but still revealing. Natural, organic, a little bit warm and tonally rich in the mid-range, and good, strong, powerful bass. Now, of course, the KEF R3 Meta being so much larger and so much more expensive can do all those things tremendously better. So let's get that out of your mind and let's get back to talking about the MB42X G2. That's just $99. What are some caveats? What are some things you got to know about it? Because I just hyped it up a lot. I just said a lot of positive things, but let's set some realistic expectations. Now, this is a very small speaker, so while it does have good, confident, powerful bass for its size, and while some people may feel a subwoofer is optional in a more intimate setting, It doesn't mean you can play them at neck-breaking volumes with your most bass-heavy recordings, right? This woofer will bottom out if you push some kind of crazy bass song through it above 80, 82 dB, something like Unstoppable by Troy Boy, right? So be mindful, right? You certainly can use some high pass functions and such to get more volume out of them, but this is a tiny speaker with a very confident sound, and it's going to sound absolutely beautiful as long as you stay within its volume limits. Now, if you don't like what I just said, you want something that can play louder, that's what the old MB42X was. And that is still available for sale. And matter of fact, some of you guys might want to know how this compares to the old MB42X. And usually I would tell you, but I'm going to do you a solid because Micca actually tells us on their website, I read it, and it was 100% accurate. Micca knows what kind of speakers they're making. I appreciate this so much. I'm just going to throw it on the screen. You guys can check that out. Feel free to pause the video, give that a read. Exactly what they say is the difference between the old MB42X and the new G2 model. Here, I'll tell you real quick. The old MB42X, a lot brighter up top, a little bit thinner in the mids, quite a bit thinner in the mids, honestly, much less bass, but conversely could play louder. So back to the MB42X G2. I've told you about its pros. I've told you about its slight caveats. You got to stay within its volume limit. And guys, that's the case with just about any speaker in and around this price range. How about the Sony SSCS5? That was another $99 champion, as long as you stayed within its volume limit of about 75, 76 dB in my opinion. And that's something I definitely touched on in that video. So this is not a bad thing. This doesn't make the speaker bad in any way. It's very normal for the price category. If you want something that could play a lot louder or take a lot more watts, you're going to need to spend more money or get the old version regular MB42. So how does it compare to some other speakers in and around its price category? So I already put the screenshot up on how it compares to its previous iteration, the non-G2 version. Let's talk about how it compares to the Sony SSCS5. That's another fan favorite in and around this price. It regularly sells for about $199 full MSRP. It goes on sale fairly often for about $149, $159. It used to go down to as low as $99, but I'm not sure that's been happening recently. Either way, let's do the comparison. Now, the Sony is quite a bit larger. The Sony is interesting. Hear me out. I've gotten a lot of different feedback from the audience on how their Sony SSCS5 sound. It sounds like there might be different versions out there. Some people say they're really bright and energetic. Other people, like myself, my pair was very neutral. So I can only tell you what my pair sounded like. So I guess that's one difference right there. When you buy the Sony SSCS5, it's a bit of a dice roll. You might get a pair that is fairly bright and maybe a little bit brash, or you might get a pair that's more neutral. Those things are just mass produced in very large quantities at very low price points, and the consistency from unit to unit just isn't as good as some customers may hope. The MB42X G2, in my experience with Micca so far and everything I've read online, it seems like everyone's having similar experiences. It doesn't seem like they have any consistency issues from batch to batch. Starting at the top end, the Sony SSCS5 and the Micca MB42X are both fairly effortless with their treble, and that's a rare characteristic to see in and around this price point, and that's one of the reasons I consider both of them hidden gems as long as you get the good Sony SSCS5s. The Micca MB42X treble did give me just a little bit more resolution, but it wasn't a big difference. I wouldn't run out and buy the MB42X G2 if you currently own the Sony SSCS5s. Moving down in the mid-range, I found the Sonys to be quite a bit more neutral in the mid-range, where the Micca MB42X G2 gave me a little bit more body, warmth, and tonal richness. Moving down to the bass, both speakers have shockingly good bass for their respective sizes. Bass quantity between the two is about on par and equal, which is a shocker because the Sony SSCS5 is considerably larger than the Micca MB42X. Now, they both have their limits in terms of volume. The Sony SSCS5 is best up to about 75 dB. Above that, and the tweeter starts to fall apart, that mid-range driver starts to fall apart. So I like that speaker up to about 75 dB. The Micca MB42X G2, being a lot smaller, believe it or not, can actually hold its composure and play a little bit louder, going as high as about 80 to 82 dB, depending on what kind of song you're listening to and how much bass it has. Hell, if it's just like rock and roll, you can push it to like 85 dB, honestly. But like a real bass heavy track, probably, 78, 79 dB. Anyhow, I digress. The Micca MB42X can play louder. That was a shocker for me. And that's how those two speakers compare. For the most part, I think, unless you just want the larger look of the Sony, I think the Micca MB42X G2 is better than the Sony SSCS5. That's what I think. Let's see, what else can we compare it to? Let's see here. Like I said, I don't review a lot of inexpensive speakers, guys, because I don't like most of them. Let's compare it to something that's a little bit more expensive. What happens when you add another $100 to your budget? Let's talk about the RSL CG3M. It's roughly the same size. Similar driver complements in terms of size as well, right? This is a 4-inch driver, 3/4-inch silk dome tweeter, right? The RSL CG3M has a similar driver size complement and similar cabinet size. That speaker sells for, I want to say, $210 for the pair, whereas the Micca MB42X G2 sells for $99 a pair, so half price. Let's start with the treble region. Both speakers' treble region, mostly neutral, fairly revealing. The RSL CG3M does bring a little bit more air, space, and clarity overall in the treble region. It costs double the price, that's no surprise. Moving down to the mid-range, the Micca MB42X is more warm and tonally rich. The RSL CG3M is also warm and tonally rich, but airs more towards neutral. So the Micca is a little bit warmer in the mids. Moving down to the bass, there's a really big difference here. The Micca MB42X G2 actually has substantially more bass and a substantially fuller sound overall. The RSL CG3M, conversely, while it doesn't have much bass at all, it can play substantially louder. That speaker was really designed to be part of a microsystem and paired with a sub or a satellite speaker in a home theater. We know RSL is they make one of the most popular affordable subwoofers. So that speaker was really designed to go with a subwoofer, where the Micca MB42X G2, I'd say it's a great speaker for anyone who's getting started for one reason or another. You're light on cash. Who knows? Maybe you got to send the kids to college. Maybe you're going through a divorce. Maybe you're between jobs. Who knows what your situation is? It doesn't matter. You're tight on cash. You got to put together a system on the cheap. You don't have enough money to add a subwoofer also. You need something small. This speaker has enough fullness to the sound, thanks to its bass, again, as long as you stay within reasonable volumes, that I think most people could get by until they can save up enough money to get a subwoofer. If it were me, a subwoofer I'd pair with this speaker would be something like the RSL 10E. Speaking of RSL, let's talk about amp pairings, because I did test a few different amplifiers. My favorite was RSL's IA255.1. This is an amp that's $110. I do also have the Fosse ZA3. I prefer the RSL IA255.1 for a few reasons. Ultimately, it just sounded more confident. The RSL IA255.1 also has a high pass function, so if you want these to be able to play louder, you can roll off the bass using the RSL's high pass function or its tone controls, whereas the Fosse ZA3 doesn't have any of those setup features. So you can get more out of this speaker, and it's going to sound better using the RSL IA255.1. That's just $110. So that's my recommendation. Of course, I did connect them to like my reference mono blocks and like more expensive amps just for fun. And they did definitely like open up a little bit more and things like that. But they were pretty much at their performance limit almost, just with the RSL IA255.1. And that's a great little amp, guys. Let me think if I only gave you guys two comparisons. Let me think if, there's another comparison I want to give you guys. No, I think that paints the picture. And here's the thing. As I said in the beginning of this video, I don't generally review products in this price category. That doesn't mean I haven't heard a lot of them. I hear them, and most of the times I hate them. I send them back. I don't want to review them. I don't want to deal with it. I only want to review products that I really like. I want to bring you guys good stuff, not tell you like, oh, this is bad, and just sound like a Debbie Downer, right? I want to be positive. I want to be the hype man. This is a hidden gem. This is a fantastic speaker. If you're putting together a system and all you've got is about $99 to put towards speakers, get the Micca MB42X G2. If you need an amp to pair with them, I recommend the RSL IA255.1. And if you need a subwoofer, again, I recommend the RSL 10E. Now, if this, you're like, why are you recommending RSL so much? They're kind of the champions of like really good, inexpensive stuff. Like, they just are. Like, check them out, like seriously. And apparently Micca is a champion of that as well. So the two brands are going to just go together really well. So with that said, guys, I think I've told you just about everything I wanted to tell you about the Micca MB42X G2. If you got any questions, this YouTube channel does have a free Discord, or you can ask your comments in the YouTube comments section. Please try to give me some context when you're asking a question. Like if you're like, hey, you know, this is my room size. Will these be able to play this loud or whatever? Tell me how far away you're sitting. That matters, right? Sitting 20 feet away, for example, is a big difference than sitting 4 or 5 feet away, right? So anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care.